Okay.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Annie and Kate. Today our guest is Helena Dix, and I will hand over to Annie. Hello, Annie, to introduce.
Hello and welcome from hotel quarantine, day 10. I know you can't see that from my background, largely because I can't remember how to switch the background off. Otherwise, you would see an incredibly dull hotel kind of backsplash of just huge boringness. Well, it would not actually know. Yes, look at Helena's background. That's
like that.
Yes. So we have the fabulous Helena Dix today, who was once described by critics as the most exciting voice since Joan Sutherland. Helena was born in Australia, secured her name on the operatic stages around the world. She has a great deal of success in competitions, most notably representing Australia in the 2005 BBC Cardiff Singer of the World, runner-up in the prestigious Hans Serald aria and finalist in the McDonald's aria. Basically, this woman is a badass diva. We're incredibly lucky to have her on the podcast. And frankly, I'm pretty confident the only reason that we've managed to secure her on the podcast is we randomly were on the same flight home from the UK to Australia. A friend of ours on Twitter managed to kind of connect the dots, and we waved across the aisle and just sort of waved hello to each other. So we've been quarantine buddies now for 10 days. Helena, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. Well, I kind of didn't have a choice with you across the corridor from me. I got a bit worried about what you do to me if no, I'm just joking. It's so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Well, Annie's been telling us how nice it is to hear you practicing.
I'm just very fortunate that I got someone like Annie across the hallway, because it could have gone dramatically wrong. You know, a lot of people, I'm sure, I think there is someone next door to me, but he's very, very quiet. I don't hear him very frequently. Poor guy's probably got his noise cancelling earphones on permanently with me in the room.
Excellent. So we've got this formula where we're going to each ask you a question. Annie, do you want to start?
I will indeed. So, Helena, if you could go back and tell your former self, your younger self, something that you wish you'd have known when you first started out in your career, what would you tell your former self?
Well, when I was young, I was pretty much very family oriented. My mum was my world. Australia was my world. I never planned on leaving. So it took quite a while to get the courage, I guess, to pack up and go overseas, because as much as I love Australia, you know, the scene here isn't really enough to progress and to develop yourself as a young artist, not on its own anyway. So I think the experience of going overseas and learning about cultures and other people and, you know, traveling to different countries and singing was so fantastic. So I would say to my younger self, be brave, do it early, get out there and just experience things. I mean, I did anyway, but I would have loved to have known that earlier on, I think, to be able to take that plunge and to be brave enough to leave the nest or fly from the nest, so to speak, you know.
So how old were you then when you first left to kind of pursue your singing career?
I was 23 when I left. So I'd done a Bachelor of Music back home. And then I spent 2 years kind of working in Australia, but, you know, doing a little bit of singing. At that time, there weren't really a plethora of opera companies around. There was only the main opera company, Opera Australia, which I joined as a chorus member. And then I did some small productions just to get experience and things like that. So yeah, I was 23 when I left for the UK, and I left because, well, for many reasons, but predominantly I took up a scholarship position at the Royal Academy of Music in London, and I knew that I needed to leave to take that next step, to be brave, not only as a singer, but just as a person as well. You know, I love Australia and I love home, but to do my job and to get used to life on the road and to traveling and everything, I I was under that little feather of mother hen, and I love my mum. She's my best mate in the whole world, but I needed to have that courage to get out and really find myself and be involved in the world and learn more than just what was offered to me back home. So went across and did a 2-year postgraduate in opera, got a full scholarship at the academy, and then everyone placed bets on how long I'd last from like a week through to a couple of years, and they all thought I'd be home again. They thought there was no way I'd leave my family for that long. And haven't been back permanently since. Obviously working to visit, but not permanently.
That's a fabulous story. So how do you, being a singer, I'm assuming that you practice self-care. So what do you do to look after yourself and your voice?
Singers are the most neurotic creatures when it comes to looking after the voice. So it's a very interesting question. I don't do this, I should say, but one of my best mates told me once, he said, on the day of a gig, I have to spit the toothpaste exactly in the plug hole and not miss. Otherwise, I'm going to have a bad concert. I'm not going to. So it's like completely superstitious. He's like, I can't leave the car keys on the table, and I have to spit the toothpaste directly in the plug hole. And that just made me. I laughed so much when I heard that, but these kind of things come up quite regularly with opera singers. And if you imagine, the thing is, opera is a weird and wonderful art form, but when you're singing live, and that's predominantly like the area that I'm in with live opera, anything can happen, and often does, and it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to get through a 3-hour opera with 450 pages in a foreign language that you've memorized, to learn to put it together with other colleagues. You've got to remember your direction. You've got to remember your physicality. You've got to remember how to produce what you're doing. You've got to remember the emotion, the story, the connection. And so it's a weird and wonderful industry with a lot of pressure. And for me personally, it's taken me probably quite a long time to learn how to unwind. I think possibly until I met my husband, I was really terrible at that. I would just work all the time, because as a singer, especially as a young singer, kind of growing up and everything, you're also promoting yourself, social networking, like doing everything basically. So I just liked work. And so I was only really maybe when I met my husband, he was like, whoa, you need to actually stop looking at your score, stop memorizing your text, stop looking up what Greek mythology characters that you're playing and doing all, because there's so much you can do all the time. So he really made me stop, and that was a good first step. And I think the second step probably, I know it sounds silly, but it probably only came about 3 or 4 years ago for me, when I was going through a really rough time. I was overseas on a contract, and I was getting bullied on the contract, and just personally really struggling. And that was quite new for me. I'm always really prepared. I try to play friendly. I'm not a controversial kind of character as such. On the floor, I try to have fun with everyone. And I was really, really struggling. And a friend of mine said to me, you need to listen to me, because you're a stubborn cow sometimes, and you need to listen to me, and you need to say to yourself, Helena, be kind, do something really kind for yourself, and make that something that you do regularly. So I'm not a particularly pampery girl or, anything like that. And the thing that made me most happy was just buying a face mask that smelt pretty from a shop, and laying at home, putting on my face, and just taking that moment. And as far as the voice goes, as I said, I'm probably the more relaxed of singers as far as that goes. No air conditioning, so this room is delightful. Also, no, I personally don't have dairy within 24 hours of when I sing, because it forms a mucus lining on the cords. You wouldn't want to eat anything like crackers or anything dry that's going to get caught. A lot of singers stay away from fruits and things like that would cause acid responses in the throat, again, because it burns. A lot of singers won't have cold water with ice because it affects the throat. So warm water, steam, rest, hydration are the common factors behind happy singers, I guess.
That is quite fascinating. An insight. You mentioned bullying. I just hadn't imagined that was part of the world, but it must be. It's a part of every part of the world.
Yeah, I think the further up the ladder you go, the more you realize that there's a lot more that goes on in some of the bigger institutions than you think. And I think that in opera, it's a really hard-hitting industry, because if you're not one of the best in my field, then you kind of can't make a living off it. It's not something that a whole lot of people make a living from. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that put together an opera and, you know, everything with all the different facets of what comes together. But as a singer, it's quite cutthroat. And what you learn as you progress up is that the people that are the most wonderful are the people who are actually just have worked their way up there. They're really talented. They've earned it. They're there. They own it. They're wonderful, wonderful human beings. And then you get some people on the cusp of that who feel like they've got something to prove quite regularly. And if they think that they can tear you down, it's very interesting. Then they will. I was a cover, which meant that I was the understudy for the lead diva at the Metropolitan for many, many years. And then I got to make my debut. But being a cover is particularly difficult as well. So then there's that added pressure, because you have to be ready to go on for them at a moment's notice, anything from mid-performance to, 5 minutes before the call starts, however you put it. So you need to have a lot of fire in you to get the courage to be able to just, excuse me, it's the air conditioning. You need to have fire in you to be able to just, go and do it. And bullying is it's a very interesting thing, because a lot of singers, as they rise up the levels through different countries, and different countries handle things very differently, they feel very subject to doing the right thing and saying the right thing. And if someone's in power and they pick on them, they'll just take it because they're afraid they won't get work. And, it's a really interesting thing that happens. And I wouldn't say it happens regularly, but it certainly does happen. There are certain places that it happens more than others, but there are some really formidable singers. And I'd like to think in some very tiny way that I'm part of that little small cause of singers who are really fighting against that and trying to end that, and making everything more accessible, and making everyone treated beautifully, and just, making the environment a better place to be on all fronts, I guess.
So when you landed in the UK as a youngster, as a mere 20-something-year-old, what was that like, going to the academy and stuff? Was that really different to Australia?
Yeah, I remember being, I remember landing at Heathrow and getting on a train in peak hour kind of morning time, and being this like fresh little, it wasn't completely fresh, obviously I got off a long flight, but I was super excited and nervous about being there. And I tried to talk to everyone on the tube, and I learned very quickly that you just don't talk to people on the tube in the morning. Like, you just don't do that, and they look at you like you need medication or help if you do. And I'll never forget it, actually, because I was there with my case, and I was like, morning, morning, and all these kind of people with their papers, not wanting to look at you. And I remember this one man, he was reading his paper, and I said, good morning. I said, how are you today? And he kind of just put his paper down, and he looked at me and he said, in this country, we don't just chat to anyone, especially in the morning. I was reading my paper, and he pushes his paper back up, and I literally got my finger and I pushed his paper down, and I went, well, I wanted to say hi anyway, and I hope you have a lovely day. I like tormenting the British. I think it's really fun, actually.
I'm Aussie because we're not British.
I do love them, and they've grown on me a lot. It was just hilarious. To be honest, I cried myself to sleep for about a week. This is very Helena, actually. I cried, and then I thought, this is absolute, like, this behavior is ridiculous, Helena, like, grow up and just deal with it. I was in a little box room in student accommodation. They put me in the wrong building. I was supposed to be in a building that had a kitchen, and long term they put me in the party building, which had like the bar and the cafe and the gym and everything, which is great, but great for socializing. But I don't drink, and I'm very I'm just not that person. I was there to learn, and I was there to, to grow. And so I marched myself down to the head of the institution's office, made an appointment with him, much to everyone's disgust, and managed to win him over with some singing and a talk of the fact that he had a poster of where Neighbours is filmed, and he was obsessed with Neighbours. And I was like, oh, you want to talk about Ramsay Street? I lived near Ramsay Street. And then we were best friends forever, and he put me in the other building. It took about a month to get over there, but I managed to get there. And then I made just some of the best friends in my life. I made it my mission to not just sit with people who I knew from college at the student house. The student house had many different nationalities and people doing all kinds of different things. And that was my mission. My mission was to meet people from different cultures, to get to know them, to understand different things. I encouraged all the people that I got to know to cook stuff that they would cook from their home. We did an Easter thing where I did a turkey, and everyone bought food that they would make for any celebration in their country. And we all came together. There's about 20 of us. And I got the student house to sponsor an Easter egg hunt. And we did all of that. And it was wicked. I made some of the best friends that I've made in my life. And the hardest thing, of course, is that then afterwards, everyone goes off their different ways, whether they stay or whether they go back to their countries, or they travel, or they stay and go. But this is the beauty of technology and being able to keep in touch. And I've been able to go to their countries and visit them and learn from them and be involved in their lives since then. So it's a really beautiful piecing together, actually.
You're on mute, Annie.
Thought I'd pressed unmute. Damn it. Anywho, before we go on to the next question, Kate, what are you drinking?
I am drinking soda water because I've just come back from outside where I've been doing mad gardening, and it's 30 degrees.
It is quite hot out there. I know that only just from vaguely putting my head into the hallway.
On the window.
I have a very lovely bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, most beautifully donated by my wonderful friend Kate, actually, who had that delivered for me yesterday. So thank you, Kate, for sending wine to my hotel. You're a fabulous
It's wine by women. So
it's wine by women. It tastes amazing. I've actually had this 2 or 3 times before. It's really, really lovely. So it's the Penley Estate Black Bull Cabernet Sauvignon. Thoroughly recommend it. Helena, what are you drinking?
Mine's far more boring. It's just Pepsi Max. That's all it is. That's my comfort drink.
Plastic glass as well.
I don't know how you managed to get that beautiful glass into hotel quarantine.
My brother gave these to me for Christmas, so they were in my suitcase. So I am very happy with my fancy glassware. All right, here's my next question for you, Helena. I know that because you told me this in the coach on the way to the hotel where we are quarantined for at least 3 more days. You told me that you got COVID. And how long ago was that? So remind us, how long ago did it happen? How did it affect you? And for somebody that is, your job is singing, I can't imagine that getting COVID was an easy thing to try and kind of cope with, because it affects the lungs, it affects breathing, all of the things that you kind of need for your job. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I got COVID right at the start of the pandemic. So back in late March of 2020, there was a call that came out in the UK for emergency teachers to go into schools and teach music. And I volunteered to go in and work with the kids. I guess at that stage, we knew quite little about the pandemic. I mean, obviously it was coming about, but it still wasn't quite, enough knowledge on what and how. The kids were great. They cleaned their hands, they distance, all those things, but there wasn't the whole mask thing available at that time. So I caught it kind of that way. I didn't get on any public transport. I drove. I was trying to be cautious, all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, I got COVID. I had the rough part of it for about 12 days or so, a temperature of about 39.5 to 6 for a good 5 to 6 days of it. Lost all the regular symptoms basically. And I don't do well at being ill. I always get told off for not resting. I'll come downstairs and my husband will be like, get back up. But with this, I could hardly get out of bed. I was really, really quite rough. And then I thought I was getting better. A couple of days after that, I decided to take my dog over to the park, and I came back and I said to my husband, there's something not right about my breathing. And he said, well, sweetheart, you've just had COVID. We don't know much about it, but they say that it can take a while. So it's just the after effects, nothing to panic about. I was like, I'll see how I go, see if I feel any worse. And the next morning I got up, we were socially distancing at the time. We were sleeping in different rooms, and I called out to him and I said, do you want a cuppa? He said, yeah, okay. I went downstairs, I put the kettle on, and the next thing I know, I couldn't breathe. It was literally like a flick of a switch. And all of a sudden I was like, I can't breathe. And it was, by far the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. And I always say, if something goes wrong with me, like, don't take away my breath. Like, for me, that's possibly the worst thing that you could do. I couldn't call out to my husband because I had no voice. I didn't have enough air to produce any sound. So I called emergency. Very thankfully, I had my mobile phone next to me, called emergency straight away. They had an ambulance round to me within, I think, 4 minutes, actually. Wow. And it was amazing. And we live right near the hospital, so it's kind of fortunate on a couple of fronts, I guess. And then I texted my husband and I said, emergency. And he kind of came running downstairs and found me. I'd opened up the back door. I was sitting on the chair. My dog was going insane. My dog was crying and yelping and pawing me. And I couldn't, things were spinning. And I remember at the time, as much as it was like horrendous, there was a sense of kind of, not calm, but a sense of like, okay, you need to focus. This is like the little voice in my head. You need to focus on everything that you know about breathing. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had the clot. I had a clot on one side of my lungs, and the doctors tell me now on the other side of it that they've never seen anyone with a clot the size that I had and that had survived. And I just remember having the sensation that one side of my lungs, I couldn't breathe at all. It's very odd. And the other side, and I'm trying to manipulate everything that I know about breathing from the sense of breathing into my back muscles and trying to engage all the support that I've studied and know. And I'm a real nerd as far as all that goes. So, I'm super into all that kind of thing anyway, into that side of things as far as the voice goes. And yeah, my husband came down and he said to me, he still gets very upset when you bring this up with him. He said to me, oh, for God's sake, Helena, just breathe deeper, will you? Like, because I was, gasping and panicking, and he was panicking, so he didn't know what to say. So he's got his hand on my shoulder and he's kind of like trying to calm me down, but he was getting frustrated, and he said, I can't believe I said that to you. And I was like, look, it's all right. Like, upon perspective, it's all good. But he was like, for God's sake, just breathe deeper. And I'm like, I'm trying, so when they got there, they put me on oxygen, and I saw the woman kind of like look like this, and I was like, okay. And she said, we're going to have to try and now get you to the ambulance. So we're going to, go grab a stretcher and just trying to negotiate everything. And I said, I'm on the oxygen, and I'm like, I can walk. She's like, I don't think that's probably a good idea. And I'm like, no, I'm fine, and I got up, took one step, and I'm like, no, okay, no, not fine. And yeah, everything else was a bit of a blur, and there's lots and lots of, I had about 15 doctors and lots of lights and scary sounds and people jabbing you and taking different measurements and doing different things. And yeah, they said it was pretty amazing that I got through. In fact, quite a few weeks later, I was in A&E for something post-COVID. I've got some trouble with a leg of mine because of all of this. And the doctor said, I just looked at your scans from your lung clot. He said, I'm not going to lie, it made me feel like throwing up a little bit. And I went, helpful. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks so much. There's nothing like a bit of positivity to cheer me on.
At least it was after the fact. They didn't tell you that while it was happening.
That's true. So they had me in hospital for about 12 to 13 days, I think, over Easter time. And I was in a confined room. I wasn't allowed anything. No, because, again, it was early days of COVID. They still didn't really quite know. So no guests, no food, no gifts, no cards, no anything, no paper, nothing. I was allowed my phone charger, and some extra bits of clothes, and they had me on the oxygen for quite a while. I used to sing along with my Aussie monitor for amusement, and just to harmonize with it, because it used to annoy me that it was the same pitch all the time. And they just slowly got me off the oxygen and then allowed me to go home.
But you were on a ventilator for a little while as well, right?
No, so I believe there's a difference between the way that it's worded here. Yes, so no, I wasn't. I was just on oxygen for quite a while, so that I had the full face mask thing here, and then gradually they put the thing up the nose for a little bit after, and then they slowly lowered the levels of it, and then.
But I remember the other thing you said to me was, I think one of the reasons why you kind of dealt with the recovery quite so much is your lung capacity.
Yeah, I mean,
spent all those years preparing.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what I was bound to do because of it. Yeah, no, 100%. So much so that they had a breathing expert coming around to visit the patients who were in there because of COVID. And he knocked on my door and he said, I believe I could perhaps learn a thing or two off you, so maybe we could train together. And I've since given my time to quite a lot of doctors who are working with COVID people who've had COVID sufferers. I've given my time to be able to help give them some knowledge, and I've created some breathing exercises and activities that are helpful for their patients to try and recover. Because of course, coming back to the piano again, when I got home and I was told, take it easy, don't do any singing for a while. I mean, that lasted about 2 or 3 days, and then I was like defiant as ever, which I usually am. And I sat at the piano and I played a chord, and I took a deep breath in, and usually I can sing for like 4 bars, and I literally went, it was like one note, and I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. It was extraordinary, and so that happened for a couple of days where I sat there, and then I just cried because I just thought this is like extraordinary, and it just made me so unhappy. But again, similar to like what happened when I moved to England, I cry for like a little time, and then I'm like, no, and out comes like super Helena, and that's it. And then we don't look back, and then that's it. So it started with singing a note, and every day I would challenge myself to sing a new extra note. And then I would leave that for the week, and that would be my weekly challenge: sing 2 notes without collapsing, because I had to be kind to my body. This is the other thing. So in building the breath back, if you pushed your breath, everything gets tight and everything, then you're training your body to do the wrong thing. So on week 2 it would be stop, and just stop and be kind and say, hey, that was quite good. 2 notes, whoop whoop. Over someone who usually can do the longest of phrases. Psychologically, it's a very odd thing, because I felt like I was going back to the beginning. And I took out a vocal method book, which was like what I trained with when I was 15. And I got that out and did technical exercises probably for about 2 months to rebuild my lungs back up to their power of, what I knew that they could do.
How long until you feel like you were right back to where you were before?
I mean, lung-wise, I'd say a couple of months to rebuild the strength, and then probably another couple of months to regain the power. Because the other thing, of course, with singing is that it's not just about the breath, it's about the strength of your body, the everything that comes with it. So there's a whole lot of other different elements that are supporting you. And when you have COVID and you kind of get past it, you feel very tired, and the body is very weak, and it goes in kind of peaks and troughs. You have really good days and really bad days. And I think it's just about accepting that psychologically and saying, okay, that's fine. It's all right. It's all good. Being kind to myself, saying, yeah, it's okay, Helena, tomorrow's a new day, and built it back up. So probably took about 4 months, and I'm now obviously many, many months on. I had to take injections twice a day for 7 months, blood thinners, and every time I inserted it into my tummy, I'd go, oh! I'd give a little note to like help get it in, because otherwise I'd shake and pass out. I had a little nurse who was just the funniest thing, and she's like, I've got to do the accent, because her accent was wicked. It was so wicked. And she said, now, Helena, when you put in needle, you have to pinch the fat on your stomach. And then she looks at me and she goes, you have so much, no problem. And she like roars with laughter. And I was like, I'm glad I've got a sense of humor in these times. She made me laugh so much. And I was like, all right, okay, thanks. So yeah, but she was right. I had a lot of access to be able to do that. And now I'm on warfarin, like a tablet form of the blood thinners, and I will continue to be on that until COVID is kind of not gone as such, but until we're all in a safer position, because they are worried about the clotting.
So did you have any of the other sort of long COVID symptoms that people report?
What I've had is long-term damage in my right leg because of the clot, which attached itself to one of the veins in my leg, and apparently had hung around there while I was lying down and had the COVID. So the clot started in my leg. Apparently, that's what they're saying that they think has happened, and then it's done damage to the vein. So then after I came out, I got like, I called it my Hulk leg. It was like 8 centimeters bigger than the other one. It was hot. It was nasty. It was swollen all the time. If you even touched it like this, I'd scream. Like my dog just like nudged it, and I'd be like, ah! That's unfortunately something I'll have to live with for life. It's much better now. I've learned how to deal with it. I've got certain exercises that I do. They've given me compression stockings to wear, like all these things. And they said gradually over time it may get better, but unless I have a full operation to remove the vein, it will always be damaged. So there's that. I guess I'm just very fortunate with the breathing that I'm in a much better place, because at the end of the day, I'd much prefer my leg to be gone than my lungs. So, I'm very glad for that.
Okay, non-COVID question.
Yes, please.
About to perform in Canberra. In how long is it away from your first performance?
We start rehearsals on the 21st or something of March, and then we open in the middle of April, basically. Yeah.
So you are Lady Macbeth, correct?
No, that's the next contract. Right. So my first contract is a Mozart opera. It's called La Clemenza di Tito, and I'm playing the badass character of Vitellia. And I get to play a lot of badass women.
We might need to do in Italian.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're singing in a different language, right?
Always, yeah. Well, most of the time, yeah.
Right. So this is my question. How do you do that? How do you speak Italian? Do you understand everything you're saying? Or do you just literally learn the words and know what they're saying, and then you kind of figure out how to... I'm baffled by this. This is ridiculous. You're not just singing, you are singing in a different language with passion and empathy and all of the other things. How do you do that?
Good question. I'm not sure. No, I'm joking. When you do your degree, or when you study opera or music or whatever, you do study the languages. So by standard, there'll be Italian, German, and French as part of your course. It's only very basic, but you'd still study those languages. Most singers would seek out a language coach at some stage of their careers. I had to do an opera once in Czechoslovakian. Yeah. So that was interesting, because there were so many consonants in one word. I was like, what, can I buy a vowel somewhere, please? Same with Welsh. I was like, can I buy a vowel? I had to sing in Welsh once. That was terrible. But the languages that are predominant in the repertoire. So I use the word specialist, but I don't mean it in any egotistical way. In opera, a lot of people do a lot of different repertoire, and they sing Mozart, Puccini, these kinds of things. I've kind of narrowed my path a little bit more. So a lot of the stuff that I do is either Italian or German. Part of that is because that's what it suits. Part of that is because I try to stay as far away from French as possible, because for some reason French just doesn't stay in my brain, and I think it's because I haven't studied it as much as I did German at school. I did Italian at like TAFE when I knew I wanted to be a singer. At like 15, 16, I went and studied Italian as well on the weekends, just to try and help myself.
How long have you wanted to be a singer?
I mean, a singer, like since I could like make the jazz hands pretty much. But an opera singer, I got my first teacher, Margaret Nisbet, when I was 15. We met each other and she said, darling, I think I can make you an opera singer. And I laughed and I was like, as if I want to do that. I mean, I pretty much thought I was like Ella Fitzgerald. I love jazz music. I pretty much thought my soul was born to sing scat. And throw in a dash of high notes by Mariah Carey, and I was like a happy camper. So opera was very foreign to me. It wasn't something, we didn't really listen to classical music growing up. It wasn't, my mum's about as cultured as my mum got was Tom Jones and Barbra Streisand. Not that is uncultured, because they are brilliant artists, but you know, that's about as much as it kind of got in our house. So so I had lessons at 15, and then I got into opera because I couldn't do it. And I loved the fact that I couldn't do it. I loved the challenge. You know, my singing teacher said to me on one of our first lessons, darling, we're not going to sing any songs. All I want you to do is take a deep breath in and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, etc. And I want to see how far you can get. And I was like, is ridiculous, you know. And then I did it, and she's like, oh, well, that was okay. And then she did it, and it was like, you know, triple my score. And I was like, And then that competitive side of me went,
I'm gonna be a little bit competitive, I get it.
I'm gonna get better at that. You know, I'm competitive, but in a nice way, not in a horrible way. And but it was that kind of, and I get a lot of joy in the fact that I can't do something. A lot of people find it very negative. And I say this to young singers that I work with all the time. I know you get frustrated with yourself, but if you get frustrated with yourself on a multiple of occasions, you're never going to get better. You need to turn it into the joy of learning, the joy of being better. And I think as an opera singer, you're never perfect. It's never fantastic. There's always something to improve. And I think people in maybe an office job or something, maybe they try to get better through promotions and things like that. I totally understand that. But the importance of, you know, being great at languages, singing beautifully, acting well, you know, there's always something. So I think, you know, from an early age, I started to really like the fact that I couldn't do it and get joy out of making myself better. And I still to this day, you know, I mean, Annie hears me every day. I try and practice. I rework phrases. I'm all consistent. I could work on a page for an hour. And I think there's a difference between being critical of yourself in a positive way and a negative way. And that really impacts, of course, all of us, I guess. I try when I teach, because I teach as well, and I try to say to young people, it's wonderful to improve yourself, but be nice to yourself too. So do it in a way that's constructive. And there have been so many people across my career that have been critical of me in a negative way, because they're like, oh, I've had it tough, I'm going to rip you down as well, you know, are you tough enough to survive the industry? Well, I'm sorry, okay, it's a tough industry. There's something about being honest, but there's absolutely no need for that crap as far as I'm concerned. And I think that there's a lot of us trying to change that mentality in the arts and with singing. And so I say to people, I will help, you know, my students especially, I say, you know, I will help make you better, but in a positive way. It's to one of my 15-year-old girls, and she's beautiful. She's got a beautiful voice, and she was singing for me. She's like, oh, damn it, you know, because she couldn't get something. And I said, okay, you didn't get it. It was terrible. I agree with you, but we can make it better, and that's exciting. So let's try and make it better. And you can just see the joy in her face from trying different things and making it a positive experience, you know, rather than me being critical and making her feel negative about herself, because at the end of the day, that's not necessary for any of us, you know.
But I think that's true for all of us in all of our workplaces. You know, a lot of the old guard want to, you know, make it tough for people because that's how they were brought up. But there's a whole generation of us that want to leave the world a better place and make it easier for the next generation, not harder. So it's good to hear that you're doing that in your world.
Yeah, I'm also tough. You know, I won't let people, students wise, I won't let people get away with it, but I wouldn't let myself get away with stuff either. You know, if it's not great singing, then we can always be better. And I think that I think also that we're true to our audience if we can step on that stage and be honest with what we give to our audience in saying, I have done everything that I can, and now this is for you, you know. And you get lazy singers who turn up to rehearsals, they don't know their music, they haven't really worked on it, and I won't put up with that either. As far as I'm concerned, you know, do your best. If that's what you can do, fantastic. Then you bring that, and then we all make it work together, you know.
That is probably a really good place to end our lovely chat. Thank you so much, Helena. It has been a delight to meet you. I am proposing a road trip to Canberra, Annie.
Hey, I'm up for this. It's either the Canberra one or the Melbourne one, I think, after Canberra. Is that right, Helena?
That's right. It's Macbeth in Melbourne, and that'll be in May, in mid-May to end of May.
Although I do like Mozart. We could do both. And in any case, it has been an absolute delight to talk to you. Lovely to see you again, Annie. Looking forward to having a proper hug very soon. Yay! And thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.